Okay, it's 2 o'clock, and so we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Paul Rutherford. I'm the co-founder of ScanPower, originally a technical co-founder, and now I do more of the chief operations role. Joining me today is Dylan with Aura, one of our newest integration partners. We're really excited to have Dylan on the webinar with us today. He's going to talk a little bit about how Aura works for those of you who are new to Aura, or if you're a longtime user, we think you'll find this webinar useful. Aura has a lot of innovative features, and we know that you'll learn something. So without further ado, welcome, Dylan. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited. Awesome.
Uh, Tell us a little bit about the background of Aura. How did you and James get started?
Cool. Cool. So managing the echo there. So James and I were wholesale sellers back before it was cool. Back when you had to pay thousands of dollars to learn the trade, which we didn't do. We just brute forced it somehow. And at the time, there was Facebook groups. Certainly there was no Discord, anything like that. But I was doing six figures in sales annually and just starting to pay my bills with it. It was starting to work. It was the first business of mine that started to actually pay the bills. So that was exciting, but I knew I wanted more. And so I started to DM everyone I could find. I think on Instagram at that point, I wasn't really big into Twitter until recently, but I just hit up everyone that I could tell had a larger wholesale business than I did and just said, hey, I'm happy to pay for an hour of your time. Can I just ask you questions? Nobody responded except for James, who said, hey, don't worry about the money. This would just be fun to talk about because nobody local to me talks about this anyways. And so we jumped onto a Skype chat back in the day and a Skype call, should I say. And we talked every, I think Thursday or Friday. And it was really just like a minor mastermind group where it was just him and I, we would just say, what are you working on? What are you struggling with? Let's help each other out. And we started to share our internal processes. We're using Google Sheets, we're using Trello for tracking shipments, all these different things. And come to find out, James was a computer science major at the time, full time. I was a finance major. And he's like, hey, I actually write code. And I've actually turned all the things that we've independently built ourselves into its own web app. Do you want to partner up and work on this together? It's like, yeah, sounds awesome. I've always been into tech. I've always wanted to go into software. And so that's what we did. So we launched the first wholesale focused Facebook group, got up to 15,000 people. I live sourced for free for 2 hours every Tuesday for 2.5 years. There's a lot of twos in that statement. Sorry. But we did that for free. We just wanted to build a community. We wanted to teach what we knew. We knew we weren't launching courses. That wasn't our jam. So we did that. And then we launched VinDriveCRM.com. That was our first software. And come to find out, charging $47 a month, I'm sorry, $27 a month for a tool that is really a small segment of the market is not a good way to build a business. So we made all the mistakes. We learned a ton though. What was nice about that is we bootstrapped everything, meaning we didn't raise money. And so we still haven't. So what's nice is we took those learnings and said, okay, where's the area we think we could have the biggest impact? The tools that we had used. And at that point, it was repricing. They're very complicated at the time. A lot of them still are. And it's very overwhelming. And so we said, you know what, we think we could build a better product here. And so that's what we did. So we sunset VinDrive CRM. It's still up. We still have some users that we support, but that's what we went after. And so we spent the next 8-9 months building the beta. And when we launched December 2018, they just took off really fast. And so we got deep into the data of that because I, as a seller, had a lot of assumptions as to what was right and wrong when it came to updating your pricing. The interesting part is what I was being told was not being reflected in the data. And so we said, well, that's a problem because sellers are operating based on things that sound correct and rational, but are actually not how things work. And so we started to teach a lot. We also launched the Wholesale Made Easy podcast, the first wholesale specific podcast. It's still up and running. And yeah, so we've just been growing ever since, and then into last year, we essentially rewrote every line of code. We re-architected everything. And so there's a lot of new stuff. And so we've just been heads down growing the team. We've never outsourced anything, which I'm proud to say. There's 6 of us on the team going on 7 now. Everybody's in downtown Boston. And yeah, we've just been scaling up, helping more sellers.
Yeah, it's what struck me, your comment about last year we rewrote the
Yeah.
application from the ground up. I'd say that's something that has to happen
Yep.
every so many years if you're running a SaaS business. And maybe, there's obviously sets of libraries that you maintain and
Yeah.
that kind of come along for the ride. But we did the same thing with ScanPower last year. We had to rewrite most of the prep and ship interface
Yep. Right.
in order to support the new user interface or the new APIs in order to support, more robust workflows for prep centers. But yeah, it's an ever-changing market, and
Yeah.
the idea that you can write a piece of software and have it, sit and work as needed to customers is no longer true. It hasn't been true for decades, but it's certainly
Yes.
not true now. And so that's one of the things that I felt, a synergy with you guys when we first started talking about doing the integration was,
Yeah.
we as tech innovators, we're constantly looking for things that are going to give our customers an advantage.
Yeah.
So what are some of those things with Aura?
Yeah. Funny enough, when I say we rewrote every line of code, that sounds like marketing hype. We actually changed languages, so we kind of had to. So when we started to re-architect, we got to a point. You have what's called technical debt, right? When you first launch a software, you don't build it to scale to 10,000 something users because you don't know if it's going to work. Eventually, in an ideal world, and luckily for us, that did occur. And so we're like, awesome, we have to build this to scale further. Costs start to go up. You're spending tens of thousands of dollars every month on hosting. Um, but we had this unique opportunity where the old version of the API was being deprecated, meaning they were shutting it down, pushing all developers to the new one. Most developers are not going to re-architect their back end, all their systems for the new API. It's too risky. But we were already doing that. So we said, okay, let's pause here and think about if we were to build Aura today, first principles, knowing what we know now, what would we change? And actually, quite a lot is the answer. So I can't cover everything, but we kind of boiled the problem down to two specific problems. You have complexity and speed. These are the things that sellers are struggling with right now. You need to be able to handle far more complex decisions far faster. And so we said, okay, well, how do we make these two things plus just an incredibly fast foundation the pillars of the product? Every feature sits in those three categories, right? So I'll hit speed first because this was such an awesome thing. This is a unique usage of the new API that it's not a given. We found a unique way of doing this. Is a pretty tough engineering problem, but we found that we could actually speed up repricing by 12x. And I'll explain what that means. We've always had instant repricing. Anything less, I think, is a travesty. You're not getting your value, but instant repricing doesn't technically mean instant. This is where marketing and engineering collide. So instant repricing really means us, the software, are instantly responding to what we need to do. We're not slowing you down. There's no delay. However, when we submit a price change to Amazon, it's going to take 1.5 to 2 minutes on average for that to be accepted, confirmed back to us. So instant really means 1.5 to 2 minutes. Now we developed a feature called Hyperdrive. It's literally a toggle. This is what's nice about how we build product. I want to take the most complex things and boil it down to the simplest usage for users. And so when you toggle that on, we can only do this up to 50 SKUs. There's a technical limit there. We can essentially cut that 1.5 to 2 minutes down to less than 10 seconds. So you're talking a theoretical 12x increase in speed. It's phenomenal. It's amazing. When we stumbled on it, we're like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then turns out it's one of our flagship features now. It's absolutely incredible. So that's speed, right? And speed is not just the repricing side, it's also the application, right? How fast can I move around the application? How fast can I load pages? How fast can I pull it up on my phone? Like, it's mobile optimized now. These little things don't seem like a big deal, but when you're actively using the tool constantly, those little delays slow you down, and that does matter. And so that's part of it. We also develop a thing called auto refresh. So on 4 pages, you can enable auto refresh, meaning you're not refreshing the page manually. When you have this on, the data itself is just every 5 seconds checking, does our backend have updated information that you're not seeing? If we do, we just push it live. There's no page reload. The data just manipulates itself. And so, 15 years ago, goodness, 8-ish years ago, updating things every 15 minutes was near real time. Right. Things just didn't update that fast. But now it is real time. Like, we need things real time. So if you loaded your page 15 minutes ago and now you come back because you went to go grab a coffee and the dog was barking and you're like, cool, I need to make this decision, and you're looking at 15-minute-old data, that's an outdated decision to me.
What are some examples, Dylan, of that data that gets refreshed that's going to be impactful to a user?
Yeah, so everything you are seeing specific to your sales and SKU specific information. So a good example here is if I'm on a SKU specific page, meaning I'm looking at one product, if I enable auto refresh, I can not only see my current price, my current fees, my current profit, current ROI, all that good stuff. But with that auto refresh on, all that data is updating every 5 seconds. So just because my price was $25 15 minutes ago doesn't mean that it's still true now. And so if I make a decision based on that information, I can make the wrong decision. And so that quantity updates incredibly fast. So you're seeing things like you're getting access to your data, which you need to make decisions, as real time as we can get it. Basically, as fast as Amazon's adding it to the API, we're showing it to you.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that's speed, right? That's the foundation of everything, right? What we do, we need speed, but complexity starts to come into the world now. Your average rule-based strategy, which is what people are used to having, has anywhere from 15 to 30 settings. That's for you, the user, to set, by the way, and hope you don't mess it up. That's not great from a product perspective, because what I want our products to provide technical leverage, meaning I'm giving you more performance while asking of you to do less, right? I want you to give me half an input and I'm going to give you 10 output. That's leverage. Why people have VAs? Leverage, outsourcing, all these things, right? So 15 to 30 is fine. We've had that for forever. That's kind of your baseline, but we had to lean really heavily into education because we needed users to set it correctly. And so we do a lot. That's why we never outsource support. Like, we want to be hands-on. And there's a lot of confusion because we call them strategies. You know what they are? They're algorithms. We just don't call them algorithms because that's not really approachable. And most sellers are like, that sounds highly technical. No, thank you, which makes sense. But we need a method through which we can solve complexity in a way that scales. And what I mean by that is, in an ideal world, if you ask me, hey, what's your go-to strategy? Last year, I had a pretty good answer. Worked about 60, 70% of the cases for your SKUs. If you ask me that now, my answer is actually more complex, because the answer is every one of your SKUs should have a strategy designed for it, and it should change moment by moment. Good luck. You can't do it. You got 1,000 SKUs, that's 1,000 strategies, and they need to change every 5-ish minutes. How do you do that? So what you don't need is more strategies. What you need is to take a step back and build a model. This is where AI comes in. So we designed something called Maven. So Maven is designed to find the balance between sales velocity and profitability. It's a natural calculation we call the optimal price. Now, anytime you're talking AI, anything like that, you have to be able to clearly define success. You don't just say, it's AI, therefore it's better. Like my son gave me this rubber duck. If I say this has AI, is it better? No, it's not. So historically, we've had a very simplistic view of how to measure success for repricing. My sales went up. I have more buy box ownership percentage. Are those two things good? Not really. Maybe. It depends, right? I can hack these two, by the way. If I want to increase your sales, I can drive your price down. Are you happy? No. If I drive your price down, I can also increase your buy box ownership percentage. Are you happy? No, because margin matters too. And that's really complicated because the optimal price changes moment by moment. It could be $20 right now, and in 15 minutes be $45. And that could be realistic. Look at toys during Q4 as an example, right? So what we're doing is we're clearly defining success as you plus ideally the buy box are at the optimal price as often as possible. So that's where we want to get to. Now we have to figure out, where are we? What are the facts here? This is where game theory comes into play. So what we'll do is we'll study every one of your competitors and understand their behaviors. If I understand, if I do X, you're always going to do Y because I've always seen you do Y, and another seller's going to do Z, I now can utilize that information to take advantage to close the gap. So we know where we are, what's true. We know where we want to go. Now what the model says is, great, what behaviors do I need to utilize to close that gap? And we're doing that 24/7. Another thing that reduces complexity, but let me phrase it this way. Another thing that allows you to take advantage of the complexities of Amazon without you having to deal with the complexities as the user is max prices. I've always said your min prices should always be automatically set using your costs, right? ROI, profit margin, fixed profit, what have you. Why? Because it allows you to make bulk changes. That's easy. So if I'm setting everything to 15% ROI and I'm going into Q4 and need to raise it to 30, do I want to recalculate per listing? No. I want to go to one input field in my strategy or my model, change 15 to 30, click save, and move on with my life. Took 2 seconds. Now, your max prices have nothing to do with you. This is where it gets really complicated. Max prices have nothing to do with your cost, but everything to do with the dynamics of the listing. And by the way, the dynamics of a listing change moment by moment. That's why it's hard to set these correctly, because most sellers either set them too low or too high. And yes, setting them too high is actually a bad thing. It actually lowers performance. All right.
Can you mute yourself, Corey? I'll do it for you.
There we go. There we go. I'm excited too, Corey. So it's not great, right? You can't properly set them. So we created something called the Auto Max. So it's a dynamic max price. So why is that cool? Well, it's a calculation, but it's a calculation that looks at things like, what was the price the buy box was last suppressed at? Well, if it was last suppressed at 45, shouldn't we consider that? Yes. But what happens in 3 weeks when a seller pulls the buy box to 46? Is that 45 still accurate? Well, no, because again, the dynamics have changed. So what we're able to do is kind of, in a way, like fundamentally change how you're approaching repricing. It's really taking a step back and saying, hey, you handle all these complexities. I'm going to give you the guardrails that I really can set, and it makes sense for me individually to set, which is really just your min price. You handle everything else. And so what happens when you pair Maven handling far more scenarios than your regular strategy, rule-based strategy can, with Hyperdrive doing it potentially 12x faster, you end up doing pretty well. And so what's interesting, we view this from like an economics perspective. If you have a lot of competition, what happens to the price? Well, it's going to have downward pressure, right? So what's interesting is Maven's able to relieve some of that pressure by raising your price strategically. And so what's interesting is most sellers, when they go from rule-based to Maven wholly, like 100% using Maven, they tend to see a slight pullback in velocity, but an increase in margin, getting back to balance, because most sellers are out of balance because of that downward pressure. And so if you look on X, Twitter, whatever, like it's very common for our users to post, hey, I got a sale at $30 30 minutes ago, and now it's at $60 or $45. It's actually very common. So it's just a whole different paradigm for how to build a repricing tool. You know, if you said, Dylan, you need to make your role-based strategies better. Okay, well, I got 3 levers I can pull. I can add a new setting, which, by the way, all your settings relate to one another. So if I add one, I just broke everything. I can remove a setting. They're still relative, so I just broke everything. Or I can change the definition of a setting, which, by the way, just broke everything. So if we think about it from an incentive model perspective for us as a company, why would I want to give you more strategies? I can't make them better, but a model is different. A model, I can say, hey, why don't you factor in something like age of inventory now? Why don't you factor in this thing? And what's nice is you get to wake up and say, oh, cool, the model changed. Well, what do I need to do and learn? Nothing. You're good. There's nothing that you need to do. So I mentioned that rule-based tends to have anywhere from 15 to 30 settings. Maven has 1. How do you want to set your minimum prices? And that's it. So you're getting more performance for less input. And so for us, that's how we've been thinking about rebuilding. And that's really what the 1.0 system is.
Nice. Nice. And there are a few things that you mentioned that it might make sense to just give a little more
Yeah.
background into. So Amazon has min-max prices,
Yes.
which are prices that we tell them will be our min-max, but they may
Yep.
or may not be acceptable to Amazon. And
Yes.
maybe talk a little bit about how those are different from the min-max prices that
Yeah.
you're giving ScanPower or you're giving Aura.
Yeah. So I almost never recommend you to set min max prices in Seller Central because they only create problems from what I've seen over the years. They're not useful in Seller Central, right? I always think about what data is useful where. Doesn't mean it should be everywhere. It should just be in an area that is useful. So we don't look at mins maxes in Seller Central. They're blind to one another. Essentially, we tell users, hey, you should not be setting those there anyways. Um, talking about Amazon thinks this price is too high, right? They might suppress the buy box. In some cases, not a lot, which is interesting. This is where that auto max comes into play. We also factor in if they're including like a competitive offer. So if they're saying, hey, we think that $30 is too high because we saw this on target.com. If they include that in the API, we'll see that and reflect it, and we'll utilize that where it makes sense. Um, in our testing, it's like 20 to 30% of SKUs actually include that. So it's kind of hit or miss. This is what's hard about what we do, right? And this is why I think sellers struggle. Just because there's an input in a piece of data, like the API, like doesn't mean it's always going to be there, right? And this is the hard part about what we do. We have to have these fallbacks. We have to say, well, sometimes it's there. When it's there, it's super important. But other times it's not, or most of the time it's not there. So what do we do then? And we have to kind of take this more macro perspective and say, great, based on all the things that we can see, what's the right decision? And that's what's tough because a lot of what's available data-wise via the API for developers is not exposed for sellers. And so you'll never see that price. You only see the negative outcome. But if we can see it and we can avoid the negative outcome, you never had to deal with it. And that's the important part here.
Yeah, I can give many examples of where either the information that is useful isn't available in the API,
Yeah.
or when something goes wrong, and in our case, that's usually related to either creating or managing inventory or creating shipments.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, what you get back from Amazon is not actionable, or it
Right.
requires having fallback options. A great
Exactly.
example is if we get an error creating shipment items, Amazon may return a list of SKUs that were part of the error, but only one of them is actually causing the error, and we
Right.
have to try to figure out what that is. Another example is we would love to show, number of units sold per month
Yeah.
in our sourcing app, and we can do that, but it's not available in the API. It's
Right.
only on the website,
Yep.
and it's only available for some products. And
Yep.
there's just so many examples where that's the benefit of working with a company like Aura. That's the benefit of
Right.
working with a company like ScanPower, because we're trying to close the gap between what is actionable, what's available in the API, and data that we can collect and we can make useful
Yeah.
and actionable, either from building a model or from going to a different source for that data. So it's really you have to be creative and you have to be
Yeah.
innovative, and you're not going to get that with a lot of companies. What you're going to get is, this is how the API was developed, and these are the
Yep.
allowed things, and these are the things that we're going to do.
Yep.
And that doesn't meet the needs of most sellers. And so it's
Yeah.
really important to have a partner that is on your side.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds trite, but it's literally, it
But it's
comes
true.
from it comes from working to provide solutions, in real time. I mean, we
Yeah.
talk about real time and dynamic. I know our support teams work similarly, that you're in constant contact with customers, and
Yep.
the support team is in constant contact with you to say, this isn't working, or this
Yep.
could be improved, and that feedback loop is tight.
Yeah, it has to be, right? And I think that's another testament to, like, for us, because my co-founder James and I have been sellers, and at least one of us is technical. I'm just a nerd. So like I didn't write any of the code, but that gives us a unique perspective, because when we're building product and trying to solve things, um, there's these nuances, and I've used tools as a seller where I'm like, I could tell this was not built by a seller, because like I get how you rationally got to your solution, but you're missing these subtleties that don't seem like a big deal, but they are. And most of what we do is not rational. It shouldn't work this way, but it does, or it should work this way, but it doesn't. And so being able to see these things through the lens of a seller, I think does really matter. And, you know, even to the degree, there's not a whole lot of mobile software, but this is like a live or demo account. This is Aura on mobile, like even with support. Well, why did we do that? Well, we did it because I got sick of seeing sellers posting on Twitter and Instagram, sitting in their car with their laptops open saying, I'm updating my pricing. But if you're out doing RA and your phone's already in your hand because you're scanning, why not just pull up Aura, do what you need to do, and move on? It's already in your right hand. I don't want you to have to say, oh, I'll do that later because I can't do it now. And so another
Yeah.
thing we really leaned into is accessibility, right? Accessibility for the application, acceptability for the technology, right? AI repricing has really been either completely fabricated, as in it's not actually AI, but marketing's
Yeah.
using it, or a very premium, you got to earn your way to get there. And I don't believe in that. And so I think technology allows more accessibility. It shouldn't restrict it, it should enable it, because it's cheaper, right? And so when we came out with 1.0, we only ever had one tier, it was 97. And then we said, well, we need to have multiple tiers, because we have people paying the same amount as somebody doing $5,000 a month who's doing 5 million a month, and they have very different needs. And so when we first came out with 1.0, we launched the Pro. So we stayed at 97. We launched Pro at 397, very premium. And we only gave AI there. We only allowed Maven there. Well, we did that because we didn't have any data to make good decisions as to what the pricing and packaging should be. So we had to start somewhere. So we started painfully to get the user feedback, and users said, great, I don't care what I'm paying you, I want access to Maven. I agree, you should have that. And you do care. And again, these are things where you can assume people care, but what if they don't in the data, right? And so we did that. We lowered the price from Pro from 497, I'm sorry, down to 397. We added a middle tier at 197. And no matter what tier you're on, you get access to Hyperdrive. Maven will personally onboard you. Like, we don't check your account in terms of stuff like that. Now you get different usage credits. So like, you don't get all 50 Hyperdrive credits on every tier, but you get access to it. And I want smaller, newer sellers to have the same competitive advantage as somebody who's been doing this for 10 years, because it's just code at the end of the day, right? We have to make the economics make sense, but that's our challenge, not yours. And so with that accessibility, we started to play around with some different ideas for pricing and packaging, and said, okay, well, users love what we've built thus far. We got a lot of positive feedback after those changes. What's next? And we realized what was next was a better entry point. We had a lot of people be like, I would love to use you, but 97 is just too much for me right now. So we looked at the data. We said, great, what cohort of people, of sellers, fit that mold? It was like less than 10 grand in monthly sales. So we said, okay, cool. We, as a startup, always get access to something called startup programs, meaning they're like, you don't have a lot of money, you're getting started, but we want to use you, and like, we want to give you a competitive advantage. Use the tool at a very discounted rate. We say, well, why shouldn't that exist here? So we launched the early stage program for Aura. So if you're doing less than 10 grand a month, that's really the only criteria. You apply for it and you're good. It's $27 a month for up to 12 months. And if you grow past the 10K within that 12 months, we give you a 50% discount for the first 3 months on that next tier. So we smooth it out. So you have a whole year, a whole 12 months to figure the business out. Because when you're getting started, you need these tools, but you don't need these tools in a way that constrains your capital, because this is a capital intensive business to begin with. So what's nice about that is you're able to get started and not have this time pressure. Take your time. It's all good. We got you covered. And by the way, we'll personally onboard you. We'll make it easy. And you're getting access to instant repricing. You're getting nothing slower than that. You have Hyperdrive credits. You have access to Maven. You can invite your VAs. You can ask our team questions and know you're actually going to get a real answer. And so you're able to get started in the right way. And so, when I was a seller trying to get started with repricing, I couldn't get any help. The product was too complex to understand, and it took like weeks to like even understand what was the right thing I'm supposed to do. And we said, that's not how this should be. It should feel easy. It should feel powerful. It should feel amazing. And it shouldn't feel like you have to be the nerd to figure it out. Let us do that. We're the
Right.
nerds,
Right. At this point, who
yeah,
wants to spend more time in front of their
right.
screen clicking settings?
Yeah.
No one.
That's it. And so we
And
really lean on Apple engineering and design, because why do people love Apple? It's intuitive. And what's funny is when I say we rebuilt everything, it's not just the code. We redesigned everything. We redid our branding. I mean, literally everything in the company was questionable. And we said, great, do it better. We thought we were operating at 80%. We paused and said, no, we're operating at 40% of what we're capable of. That's not good enough. So everything gets heightened. And so when like we have Tasso, I was just in a meeting doing a design review. His entire job, he's a product designer. His entire job, full time on our team, 6 figures, is how do I make this product easy to use, impactful, and beautiful? And that's how you get to where we're at now, where it is intuitive. It does just make sense. And we track things like, how long does it take somebody to go from they started a trial to they're actively repricing? We track that and look at it every week. If it's expanding, that's a problem. Ideally, it's going down every single week. And we look at all the data, because at the end of the day, I can have tons of customer conversations, but I need to see things at scale, the things that people aren't saying to me. And we try to find that balance of qualitative feedback and then the quantitative data, and say, great, what decisions do we need to make on behalf of our users to make this product better? And sometimes it's increase the speed of this, the performance of this by 10%, and that has a meaningful impact. Great. So, for us, we look at everything. We deeply care about everything we do.
yeah, it's evident. I've got a trial account, and I've been doing some repricing on. We have ScanPower merch, and not any kind of serious seller profile, but I've been playing around with it, and I can attest that it is very intuitive. And would now be a good time to just give people a real quick shot of what it looks
Yeah,
like and how it works?
absolutely. I love this part, actually. Okay, cool. So jump over here. Awesome. Okay, so this is the dashboard. This is a live account. This is our internal testing account, the same one I just showed you on my phone. So this page has that auto refresh. Again, this is an internal OA account, so not a ton of data, but here's that auto refresh I was telling you about. You can see it's already starting to check, see, hey, do we have anything here that you're not seeing? So we'll do that every 5 seconds. We're just checking. Now, you'll notice, by the way, there's not a ton packed in here. That's by design. I don't want it to feel like we're just giving you everything in the kitchen sink. What really should happen in good design is we create a level of hierarchy, prioritization in the data, because you're not here to look at everything. You're here to look at key things and then go deeper if you need to. So when I land on this page, I need to know, how are my sales doing? Do I have any listings in certain categories? So like, am I at my maximum price? Let me click there, go directly to it. And then I can go deeper and say, cool, how's my performance from a repricing standpoint? How much work is Aura doing for me? What's my buy box percentage? How many units am I moving? Now, this is just a simple dashboard, but it is meant to be simple. It's meant to just give you that snapshot, high level view. Now, where things get interesting is when we start to jump into listings. So this page, by default, we have it turned off right now for scaling, but this page will have auto refresh on. So if we sat here long enough, you'll just see the data change in real time. It's almost like watching a stock ticker, right? It's just real time, prices are changing. You're going from in the buy box to out of it, and vice versa. But real quickly, one thing I talked about, speed, right? Like, how fast can I find things? So if I open up to all, so Legacy Aura did not have group search, meaning I couldn't search all my Nike stuff. I had to use global search up here and go directly to a specific SKU, or just scroll and hope I found what I needed to. So we changed a lot of that. We said, no, you should be able to search the title, the SKU, the ASIN. And what's nice is a lot of sellers we talk to encode things into their ASIN. So I could be super simple and say, okay, show me my Yeti stuff. Cool. There's all my Yeti stuff, super fast. But we do encode some things in here for testing. So if I say, show me things I got from Walmart. Here's all my Walmart stuff. Now I can take bulk actions on that, do whatever I need to. I can move again super fast. Another thing that we realized in interviewing users when designing this page is every seller is so different in what they care about. So we said, okay, well, you decide what columns do you want to see, which ones you want to hide, in what order do you want to see this information. And this is specific to the profile. It's a configuration. So if I do this, change anything here, it's changed on my phone. If I have a VA with their own account in here and they're making their own kind of views, it doesn't override my view. It's all personal. And, you know, even these little small personal Easter eggs, right? It knows in the browser the time, it knows it's the afternoon. So it says, good afternoon, Dylan. If it's the morning, it'll say, good morning, Dylan. It's these little things that do just make it feel more kind of human, if that makes sense. And adding filters, you know, even some more kind of nerdy stuff that some sellers, some like keyboard friendly people will do. So if I type in Yeti, you'll notice in the address bar here, we're actually doing this in the address bar. So I can change Yeti back to Walmart, hit enter, and there we go. It's right here. So you can create some more deep linking kind of things, right? I can add filters. So Legacy Aura, you couldn't really create filters. You really had sorting, in my opinion, but now we have stackable ones. So I could say, show me things where I'm in the buy box, where my strategy is Maven default as an example. And then what's nice is we're also, again, doing this up in the address bar. So I can save this as a bookmark. Let's say I always look for listings in a certain kind of scenario. I can recreate that scenario using filters and go back to it time and time again, reducing that work of having to recreate these things. And again, notice how fast things are loading, right? Then another thing, global search. So this used to break all the time. It was not very fast. Now that's not the case. So if I exit out of here, we've got this little icon. We're trying to make things more keyboard friendly. I hate touching my mouse, if I'm being honest, because it slows me down. So if I hit the / on my keyboard, great, my cursor goes there. I can start typing in whatever I need. I can use my up and down arrows to select, hit enter, and go directly to what I need. Again, I can go as fast as I need to here. And now that specific SKU page I was talking about earlier, this is what that is. This is the most difficult page to design. Why? Because I'm trying to give you a ton of data in a way that is usable, actionable, and not overwhelming. So there's two things important that we did here. One is creating layers of information. So if I click on the buy box value here, I'll get a modals, what we call these. Now I can see all the current sellers on this listing in order. Here's me. I'm not in the buy box. Who is? Well, this seller. Okay, well, who is that? I can click on them, go straight to their storefront. Again, this page also has auto refresh. So I was talking about how data can change rapidly if our prices are changing super fast. And I have this other layer here, this hover state. Well, if my current profit is 38.31, but my price got cut down by 20 bucks for whatever reason, that's going to reflect now here. So there's no gaps in time where something could have happened that fundamentally changed my analysis. Now, the next thing is like a pyramid shape. So when you first land here, when we first, land on a page, this is called above the fold, meaning you're not scrolling. The moment I scroll, I'm below the fold. Well, this is important because just like the dashboard, you need to know at a high level when you first land here, no friction. What are my settings? How are things going? What's true? Because you have a few things. You're coming to this page either with a task in mind, you want to make a change. Great, do it there. Don't scroll. Or you're coming here because you have some questions. Great. Did you answer the question yet? No, we need to go deeper. Cool, let's go down that pyramid. We start to get deeper into, well, what's my quantity? What's nice about this is we'll break down your quantity as deep as we need to. If you're in 13 different inventory statuses, we'll show you all 13 and the quantity in each one. I've been told we update this faster than Seller Central does. So there's no questions. Where am I? What's true? What's happening? You have all that here, but it's not kind of forced into your face, if that makes sense. It's not overwhelming. So as we go deeper, we have this nice performance section, which we saw on the dashboard, but there's one key important thing that's in addition here, which is the price. This is your price over a period of time. It's like your own personal keepa. Why is this important? Well, we had sellers say, well, I'm tweaking my strategies and making changes, and I think it's going well. Well, you shouldn't have to think, you should know. So I mentioned earlier that you can't have this simplistic view of how to measure success. You can't just say, well, my buy box ownership percentage is up. I don't know if that's good by itself. I need to take a more macro approach. And so you'll notice the settings, by the way, has been scrolling with us. Because by the time you get down here, it's very likely you're going to make a decision. And I want you to be able to quickly make that change and move on with your life. Now, what's nice here is that I can look at these 4 charts and see the trends of the things that matter. Is Aura doing work for me? If it's not, that's a problem. Is my price going up or down? Is that good? I don't know. Let's take a look. How are my units going? What's my buy box percentage? I'm able to zoom out and say, how are things going? And then make a decision based off of that. We have to move away from it, taking the simplistic approach of, well, my buy box percentage went down. Why is that bad? It may actually not be bad. I mentioned that Maven doesn't optimize for getting you in the buy box more. Actually, it tries to not do that sometimes because we can get you, sales higher at higher margins. So if I just looked at this, is that good or bad? Depends, right? And so again, that intuitiveness of just making things easy to do. What we try to do is think about, why are you coming here? What are the variations of that? And then designing this so that it's easy to do those things.
We're starting to get some questions, Dylan, and this is
Awesome.
actually we're within 5 or 10 minutes of the end of the webinar, trying to keep
Perfect.
it short and sweet for everyone. Thank you for the demo. I think that
Of course.
kind of sums up what you said, as well as your philosophy of how you're designing things and what, how you're thinking about the customer's journey as they move through the app. And I'm like you, I nerd out on these things, and I spend a lot of time talking to our developers about the top of the pyramid, or the data that's going to be in the user's view that is the most important. And don't make me scroll, don't make me do math, don't add any friction if you can avoid it.
Exactly.
First question from Brittany is, I'm not sure if I missed this, but any changes made in Aura, would it reflect on your sales page? And you're talking about Seller Central, I believe.
So there's a few things here. So if we're talking about, if you made a change in here, would it show on like the Amazon.com public listing? It will. The thing you have to keep in mind is those pages are cached, meaning to make pages faster, you basically like store information in the browser, and that doesn't update as fast. So if you're seeing changes in your repricing tool and then you're jumping into Amazon.com, make sure to do that in incognito, because it's going to be an uncached version, meaning it's going to be the most up-to-date. It's going to be slower, but they're going to force up-to-date information. This is where things get further complicated for users, is like, we have our data. Seller Central has like 3 variations of that data in different locations, and then you have the public version, and they're not always in sync at the same time. So what we do is we say the way we define what the data really is what we see in the API, because that's the most up-to-date information we can see.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Does Aura have a function that can raise the price to the max for every 3 hours and stay for 20 to 30 minutes? Then after that, revert to the normal price. I'm not going to try to interpret some of these questions, because I am definitely not a repricing
You're good.
expert.
So we have a feature called workflows, which is kind of like, if you're familiar with Zapier, it's like you have a set of actions and a set of triggers, and then you can kind of configure it how you want. We do have it where you can say every 3 hours, explicitly is one of the options, raise my price to whatever that could be. It could be custom, 30% above the buy box, to my max price, and hold it there for 20 minutes, and then it'll just revert. That used to be the go-to standard. A lot of people call this the yo-yo strategy. What I've been seeing in the data is actually, if you use Maven and not that, it works much better, because it's more strategic. Where a lot of sellers get stuck is this time-bound stuff. Anytime we're that rigid, I can guarantee you're missing out on upside. And so by going the AI route with Maven, it does do that, but in a more strategic, it understands when to do that. So it's not this rigid every 3 hours. Now, if you're using a rule-based strategy with that workflow, it's going to be completely fine. But from what I've been seeing in the data, Maven tends to do much better in that world than the rule-based plus a workflow.
I think the next question is for me, Corey. Yeah, so Corey's referring to our app shows Keepa information, right on the page. When you scan it, you can very easily tell, is Amazon selling? You can look at drops and rank changes over time. And The other cool thing, Corey, about ScanPower since you last used it is we've made all of the date range filters apply to all the other data. So we've tied, if you want to look at 90 days instead of 365 days, the Keepa chart's going to change and just show that time period. We're also going to tie that to how many you've sold in that time period. So we're pulling in your sales data, we're pulling in your inventory, we're showing the Keepa information, we're showing returns. So you get all of that in one place, and yeah, I can say pretty confidently that it won't crash on you unless we've got some incompatibility with an older phone or something like that. But come try it out, use it, let us know, because all of these things are top of mind when we're adding and improving on the features of the app, but it's got to work for you.
I would say too, like, we use the Keepa API in the VinDrive CRM product, and it crashed all the time. There's a lot of reliability issues with the Keepa API, and I think they've made progress on it, but that is the difficulty of working with other APIs, is you kind of have to hope that their reliability is as good as you need it to be, and that's not always the case. So keep that in mind.
It's improved. We can't say that.
That's good.
Leadia says, thanks for the information. Your tool is already available and working also in Europe? Question. I am joining from Hungary. Welcome.
Nice. Yeah. So
Amazon
we
beginner
right now
seller from the German market. Yeah, nice to meet you too.
Yeah, likewise. So right now we're just North America. We do have everything positioned to go to all 20 marketplaces. So we have currency baked in, which I didn't cover. And now it's just working. It's one of those things, like, it's not the most difficult thing in the world, but it's so time consuming because a lot of the reports are in different languages and you have to do translation on those correctly. And there's a lot of subtleties that can fundamentally change things. So that's something we don't want to rush, but it's something we do want to do. So we're heavily looking at things like Walmart. We're heavily looking at expanding to all 20 marketplaces. We're positioned to do that. We had this amazing integration launch last week. We have another amazing announcement on Thursday. So a lot coming. That's our problem as a bunch of dorks, is like there's a never ending list of things we want to build. And it's like trying to prioritize that correctly is really difficult, but we do want to get to that, I promise.
Yeah, and ScanPower, in any ways that we can help with that, Dylan. We're not in all 20 marketplaces, but we are in 9 or 10 at this point.
Well, I'll have
and
to
certainly, if we can push
Yes.
that locale and marketplace data to you in different forms, if that would help. Also, is the switch from Inventory Lab to ScanPower smooth? Well, Corey, that's something that we're happy to help with. We've spent a lot of time trying to make it easy to import your Inventory Lab data. But we know that, one of the challenges of switching any software is you don't want to lose too much of your history, and you have the cost of changing and getting used to a new UI. So we'll be happy to help you with that. And obviously you can try it. We'll give you an extended trial. We also have an early stage program copied, bit for bit from Aura. So it's really inexpensive to change right now. And to try the two together. Kevin asked, how often does Aura pull in cost data from ScanPower?
Yeah, so right now it's basically default every 15 minutes is when we check it. There is a forced resync that you can do. So if you need to go faster, you can do that. But every 15 minutes, that's when we're checking. We may change that. Basically, we set 15 minutes as a good benchmark. And if we find we can go faster and that adds value, we'll consider it. But right now it's every 15 minutes. And by the way, that's for your costs, your mins, and your maxes. Corey, love that you've been with us since 2022. Awesome to hear, man. That's great.
Yeah, thanks for that comment, Corey. Well, we're a little over time, but I love that we've been able to cover so much ground, and I really appreciate Dylan coming on and telling us about the new Aura, even though Aura is, definitely a seasoned software that, we've been aware of it for, 8 years now, and heard nothing but great feedback. And we're really excited to integrate and partner with you guys. And we look forward to, trading users, having more Aura users experience ScanPower and vice versa. So thanks again for coming on, and thanks everyone for joining us. Dylan, I know you're hosting a webinar on Thursday for us as well.
We are.
If you have a link for that you want to paste into the chat.
Perfect. Yeah, let me grab that real quick, actually.
And we will also make this recording available, and we'll publish it to YouTube, and then it'll be shared on our socials as well. And so we can publish the links to the upcoming webinars.
All right. So that link is now in the chat. You can pre-register. So it's going to be same time, 2 p.m., but on Thursday. We're essentially going to do the inverse. So I get to actually learn a lot more from Paul here on the ScanPower side. So we get to kind of flip the script here.
Yeah, it should be fun. We're really looking forward to it. And if anyone has any questions about Aura, what's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, honestly, you could email me directly, Dylan, DILLON @goaura.com. I'll actually throw that in the chat here. We're super accessible. You can obviously reach out to support. Again, our support is phenomenal. You'll either talk to Casey or Finn. So if you have any questions, like we'd love to answer those. If you're interested in the early stage, if you're doing less than 10K a month, go to goaura.com/pricing. There's a little application there. It takes 2 minutes, actually probably less, honestly, to do the application. We review those daily. And yeah, we'd love to have you give us a try.